Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. Look what I've got. White epoxy from Let's Resin. I'm so excited about this. Why am I excited? Well, I'll tell you why I'm excited. Think of all those different resin techniques that require pigmented white resin. And think of all the times you might have tried it and thought, this is the wrong pigment. This is too much pigment. This is not enough pigment. All of that, you've got to measure the pigment. Once you get it right and have a success, then you try again and you don't get quite the right amount of pigment. And it goes on and on and on and on. It just drives you mad, doesn't it? So that's why I'm hoping that this will be a game changer. It's already white, you don't need to add anything. The only thing that I found, because I have already filmed it, is that I'm going to need to work on how thick the resin is and how long I need to wait for the resin to be just right before I start my technique. So there is a lot of work for me still to do. You're seeing my first attempt today. There are some fails and there are some successes. If you've come here to see something that works out beautifully, you're probably in the wrong place and you should maybe go and watch something else. But if you'd like to see my journey, my struggles, and laugh along with me, well, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and enjoy the video. So here it is, Let's Resin's new white epoxy. And the first thing I wanted to try was filling a tray, which I already have, with some white. Well, not filling it, just covering the base of it and then adding colours and blowing it around just to see what effects I could get. And just like Let's Resin's regular epoxy, it's a 1-to-1 mixing ratio by volume. So I measured out equal amounts of part A and part B and gave it a good slow mix for around 2 minutes. So once that was mixed, I set it aside for a few minutes and started preparing my colours. And for this, I'm using epoxy resin from Let's Resin. It's just their general purpose epoxy resin. And as I said before, it's a 1-to-1 mixing ratio by volume. After mixing up the resin, I separated it into 3 silicone cups before adding my pigments. The pigments I'm using are also from Let's Resin. I'm using light blue, dark blue and fuchsia. Next, I prepared my levelling table, also from Let's Resin, covered it with the silicone mat that comes with it, and then I was ready. The tray I'm using is one that I made with eco resin, and so that's, it's not perfect. That's why I'd kept it. I made it a while ago. It had a few little air bubbles that had been trapped in it, and it wasn't, like I say, it wasn't perfect, and I'd kept it just for experimenting, and so this was the perfect opportunity. Next, it was time to pour in my white epoxy, and by pouring it onto a black surface, it's a good way to show you the opacity of the resin and help you to get a good idea of how opaque it actually is. So as it spreads out, you will start to see the black through it a little bit more. It's quite thick there at the moment, but yeah, it's kind of a milky white, I would say. So I just had to move it around until that surface was completely covered. And then it was time to add the coloured pigments. I tried to do 3 puddles and just do them in different orders. If you've seen my other videos, you'll know that I do more resin casting than this kind of thing. I don't spend an awful lot of time on resin techniques, of making different patterns and all of that. Even though I've been doing resin for like 5 or 6 years, this is something I don't spend that much time on. So I'm not very good at sharing the proper names for these different processes. I never really know what to call them. But anyway, I'm making it up as I go along. You know, once I got all those colours in there, I was kind of reluctant to carry on with my original plan because I was liking the way it was looking. I almost wanted to just carry on filling it up, but I knew it wouldn't stay like that. That's the nature of resin. It would have all kind of blended anyway. So anyway, my plan was to use my heat gun to move it around, manipulate it just with the heat gun, see what would happen, see what effects I could get, and just generally mess around with it a little bit. I'm a bit of a faffer, and I did faff with it. After I tried blowing it around, I did some swiping with some waxed paper just to see what that would do. Because, you know, these things never stay as they are anyway. So I didn't mess with it too much. I told myself, don't mess too much because I've got this problem where I never know when to stop. And I suppose I'm starting to learn from experience that I need to stop. And I did. So, yeah, let's see what happens with it. So as I just mentioned, I did do a little bit of swiping with just some little scraps of wax paper. And so I'm fast forwarding so you can just see it quickly because there wasn't anything remarkable for you to see really, just a little bit of swiping and then just left it. Let's see how it turned out. So around the edges it became a little bit wishy-washy but still very pretty. I've got a piece of muck on there, typical. Anyway, the centre did stay quite defined. So yeah, I really like the centre and I don't mind the fact that it was more blurry around the edges. It turned out nice. I think this technique would work better on a canvas where it's not restricted and all the resin doesn't like bounce off the edges. It just flows outwards rather than with this it reached the edge of the tray and did all its magic that it does when it's in like a mould. It bounces off the edges, doesn't it, and does all different things. So it would this would have been very different if I'd have done it on a flat canvas and let the pattern run off the edges. But yeah, still very nice. That's the first experiment done. Let's go back in time to when I just finished pouring this and I had some of the resin left over. Here I have my heart-shaped picture frame mould from Let's Resin. I had a little bit of clear left from before, but it wasn't enough, so I needed to mix up some more. So this was already getting quite thick and yeah, so it's not ideal. It would have been better to keep everything the same rather than mixing new with old, but never mind. It was still okay. I still wanted to use up what I had, and so I mixed up a little bit more. I wanted to test out piping the white to see if I could get the bloom effect. When Let's Resin told me that they had a new white epoxy resin, the first thing I thought was, if it works for making the bloom effect, that will be an absolute game changer, because when I've tried it before, I've always been a little bit confused about how much white pigment to add to the resin and which white pigment is best to add to the resin. And honestly, it can be quite confusing. And so that's why I thought maybe this could be a game changer. If I can use this for the bloom technique, I don't need to worry about pigment or anything like that. So once I had all three colours mixed, well, two colours mixed, my blue and my pink to go with the white, I put them into the piping bags and it was ready to pipe some flowers. Now, don't judge me on this. I didn't do a good job, but it was just an experiment. And to be honest with you, I didn't think it would work. The reason being that there was fresh resin. The clear resin in there is mostly freshly mixed, so it's very thin. It's low viscosity when it's freshly mixed. But the resin that I was using up from earlier on was much thicker because it had been standing a long time. So I had a feeling it would just sink to the bottom. We will see, eh? So let's fast forward through doing this flower, because honestly, it might disguise some of the mistakes. Right, when I'd finished with the flower, if you can call it a flower, I decided to add the leftover coloured resin that I'd mixed up before. So it's the clear resin, which is pigmented with mica powder, and I just decided to drizzle it around the edges just to see what would happen. Once I'd finished doing that, I was satisfied that I hadn't wasted anything, and I was curious to see what that resin would look like when it was demoulded. You know, where I'd just put that colour around the edges. Yeah, let's see how that turns out. But first of all, I just decided to add some glass glitter just to the middle, just a little bit. So, right, are we ready? Right then, so the back looked quite nice actually. But look, my flower just sank to the bottom as I predicted it would. So I wanted to do another experiment because this one, do you remember I said it was thick resin done into fresh resin and I thought it might sink. So I needed to try again with everything all, you know, the same age. No new resin with old resin, but all mixed at the same time. Anyway, before we get to that, let's just look at the edges because I actually really liked the edges. So later on in the video, I'm going to be doing something to this so that it's not wasted because I really disliked the middle and I wanted to cover it up. But we'll come back to that in a little while. Right, before I have a second attempt at the bloom method, I wanted to try another technique. This time I wanted to drip I wanted to drip alcohol ink around the edges of the mould and then fill it up with the white resin. This is a technique I've seen done quite a lot, but never actually tried it myself, so I wasn't quite sure how much alcohol ink I needed to add. So yeah, I'm making it up as I go along, and yeah, you'll see for yourself how much I added. And for this one, the alcohol inks I'm using are Let's Resin's alcohol inks, and I'm doing blue, green and yellow. I don't know why I didn't add the yellow all the way to the bottom. Don't ask me, I don't know. But anyway, we'll sort that problem out later as well. So as you can see here, I'm just adding the white resin directly to the middle and seeing what magic happens. I think that's half the fun with epoxy, isn't it? Just seeing what magic it does all by itself. So I was watching it with interest to see what would happen with that alcohol ink. As you can see already, there's some really interesting patterns coming up to the top. So I wonder what will happen to the other side. Okay, so I wanted to have another go at the bloom, as you know. So this time I'm just using freshly made clear resin and freshly made white resin. And I'm going to add a few drops of the alcohol ink again, just to add a little bit of interest to the coasters. I think I wasn't really expecting it to work this time. I don't know why, it was just early days in my experiments and things never work for me that well so quickly. I wasn't taking too much time and thought about it. I just got some old coaster moulds that I had handy and just gave it a go. Let's see what happened with these ones. So again, with the flower design, it did sink. And yeah, I think this time the reason is that everything was too thin. I think the secret is going to be leaving all of the resin to thicken up, so the white and the clear to thicken up for some time, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. This is going to be my next experiment. So not in this video, I'm going to come back to this in another video because I think it will work. I'm not going to give up yet. I'm going to try it with the resin thickened up and then poured. So both of the resins are quite thick. Anyway, with this one, it actually works better. You can see it's starting to keep its shape. And I think that's because I didn't add so much of the white. It was just a quick zigzag that I did, and there's not so much density of the white. But yeah, sorry about my focus problems with my camera. You can see it's almost working just because there's not so much weight in the white. I just did it thinly. Yeah, it's a learning curve, definitely. But yeah, I hope you don't mind that you're joining me today in a learning process that didn't entirely come out successfully. Anyway, let's see what happened with the heart shape. I've got to have some success today, haven't I? Oh, let's see. Okay, so actually the back side was probably better than the front side. But when I saw it, I had a plan. You know, I was saying I didn't go all the way around with the yellow and I didn't know why. I found out why. It was some sort of psychic thing going on. Something else was just meant to be because I decided that that space was perfect for a picture. And what I did was I made some decals on my Cricut Maker with vinyl and filled that space, and it looked so much better, don't you think? It's as though leaving that yellow bit was for a reason, and something in me knew to leave a space. That's the story I'm going with anyway. We'll have a closer look at that soon, because I'm going to do a top coat over the top of that to protect the vinyl. Let's see what I did for the other heart that I wasn't happy with. So for the other one, it was the middle that I wasn't happy with. So I found a heart design in the Cricut design space and I cut it out on holographic vinyl. Then I weeded out the excess and applied it to the heart. And I'm not sure if I like it. I think I liked it better before and I didn't like it then. But anyway... Oh dear, what a video this one is this week, isn't it? Anyway, I just wanted to be able to show you some ideas of saving pieces that have gone wrong. Because, you know, these ideas just are there to inspire and maybe they'll help you, maybe they won't. That was just my plan. So once the vinyl was added to both hearts, I decided to coat them with some of the Let's Resin's coating resin. It's the tabletop resin, which is brilliant for coating. It's nice and thick. So I just covered those up and they did look better afterwards. I put some of the holographic vinyl on the sides of the one on the right, and that kind of helped a little bit, but anyway, let's have a look. So once the top coat was on everything, it really did improve it all. And yeah, I was a lot happier with the top coat of resin on, but yeah, still not completely happy. I do like the giraffe one a lot more, and I think that one works really well. And yeah, I would say that is a success of this week's video. And you know what? Even those coasters didn't look too bad once they had the top coat of resin. I'd love how the alcohol ink really shines in the light. I like that a lot. I would say my first project is probably the best one. And I should have stopped there, shouldn't I? No, seriously. I learned a lot through the process of experimenting, as I always do. It does you good to try things out and to persist with it and try and find the answer. I haven't found the answer just yet, but I have a confident feeling that I will. I will continue my experiments with Let's Resin's white epoxy and hopefully make something that will show you just how wonderful it actually is. So if you've stayed with me right up until the end, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to. And I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching and bye for now.